Hi, I'm Kim. Let's have a look at action and rotation basics. I'll talk through the most basic concepts, so you should get something out of this video regardless of the job that you play. By the end of the video, you will heard of actions, GCD, oGCDs, combos, openers, and you get an idea of rotations. That's right. Even though I'll use Gunbreaker, Warrior, Red and White Mage as examples, you should be able to take the concepts explained here and apply them to any job. In the following, I'll often bring up Square Enix job descriptions, which you can find on the internets. For every role, tanks, healers, melee and both range DPS, they have a detailed breakdown for each of the jobs you can pick. Where to start though? Well, let's have a look at Gunbreaker, and more specifically, a Gunbreaker's combo sequences. Disclaimer, this is not a tanking guide. No tank stance, no enmity generation talk. What are combos? Combos happen when you perform a series of actions in the right order. Let's pick the first sequence, Keen Edge, which deals damage, followed by Brutal Shell, which deals damage and as a combo bonus restores health and adds a small damage barrier, followed by Solid Barrel, which deals damage and adds a cartridge to your power gauge. Okay. That's already enough to explain how combos work for every job. You probably noticed that I got combo benefits even before the combo sequence was finished. The second action, Brutal Shell, gave us health back plus a tiny damage shield. You can see the shield pop up as a status effect enhancement, Brutal Shell. And the third action, Solid Barrel, increased our job gauge. I'll come back to the job gauge later. The combo sequence that I just showed you was for a single target. For hitting multiple targets, there's another sequence, Demon Slice, which you then follow up with Demon Slaughter. These two actions don't give you an extra buff like before, but finishing this sequence still feeds your job gauge. If there are many enemies around and you aren't pressed to recover health, then definitely use this combo instead of focusing a group of enemies one by one. AoE abilities do less damage to each individual target, but their overall damage to groups of enemies is higher, because, well, they hit many targets at once. So remember the job gauge? A filled job gauge gives you access to special powerful actions. For each job there are actions and/or combos that fill the gauge, but there are also actions that fill the gauge for free. I put that in air quotes because actions that quickly fill your job gauge are pretty much on a very high cooldown. Anyway, let's have a look at how I can use Gunbreaker cartridges by firing off another combo sequence. I can use one cartridge to fire off the sequence Gnashing Fang, then Savage Claw and finally Wicked Talon. In fact, you can't change this sequence because the actions will only be enabled in this order. But I got something new here. After Gnashing Fang, I can fire off Jugular Rip, then after Savage Claw I can do an Abdomen Tear, and Wicked Talon can be followed by Eye Gauge. Gouge. So how do I use all of this in an encounter? As an example, as an opener that's part of my rotation, I can pop Bloodfest before the fight so that it goes immediately on its 90 seconds cooldown. Then I use No Mercy, which gives me a status enhancement of plus 20% damage for 20 seconds. To immediately rush to the target, I use a jumping attack Rough Divide, which I follow up with Danger Zone / Blasting Zone. After that, it's the Gnashing Fang, Jugular Rip, Savage Claw, etc. combo, which uses up one cartridge. I then regain that cartridge with the Keen Edge, Brutal Shell, Solid Barrel combo, and finally, I spend both cartridges with 2 burst strikes just as the damage buff gained by No Mercy runs out. How does this apply to other jobs? Let's have a look at another tank, Warrior. Here I can use Inner Release, which doesn't fill up our job gauge, but instead I get free access to job gauge related actions for 10 seconds. And it also guarantees that all attacks in those 10 seconds are critical and direct hits. To get to the target, I kick off with an Onslaught to rush it, and then I just spam Fell Cleave here. To show you the difference how Fell Cleave attacks look by using up the Beast gauge, I charge it up with 2 Infuriate actions. Don't worry about the status enhancement Nascent Chaos here, because it won't matter. Anyway, when using the Beast gauge, I only get 2 Fell Cleaves out before I'm forced to recharge it. Now, recharging the gauge on a Warrior tank with your basic combo is already different compared to a Gunbreaker tank. Instead of health generation and a small shield, I aim to get Storm's Eye first, because it increases my damage output. As long as Storm's Eye is up, I can then go for the combo with Storm's Path to recover health and charge up the Beast gauge. Here's my casual Red Mage, but it'll do for showing yet another example of actions that you can add to your own rotation. The Red Mage's combo sequence is a melee sequence, and yet you build up the white and black mana of your balance gauge using spells. And some of these spells like Rare Thunder and Rare Arrow have a super long cast time of 5 seconds. Well, that's because you're not supposed to cast those right away. To use those spells, I would cast a faster spell first, which grants me dual cast. dual cast makes any cast instant, which is where Thunder and Arrow come in. Once enough black and white mana are stacked up in your balance gauge, it's time to rush the target with Corpse and then go for your melee combo of Enchant Riposte, Enchant Zwergau and Enchant Redoublement. As finish, I use Displacement to jump back to save casting distance. Finally, let's take a very brief look at White Mage. I won't be going through healing actions, so that limits what I can talk about. Even though there are still some nifty things to learn. Let's say I'm in a dungeon and the tank pulls lots of mobs. Then a great damage opener is Holy. Not only will it blind your party members, it will also inflict the status enfeeblement stun to all nearby enemies for 4 seconds. In lower level content, where Holy is not yet unlocked, you can use the instant spell Arrow, which later becomes Dia, to add damage over time ticks to all enemies that the tank pulled. This dot will deal damage as you heal party members or focus targets with your stone actions, which later becomes Glare. And that's it. Like and subscribe, or don't. But if you're still here, maybe stop by and say hi in person at twitch.tv/KimFennec. See ya!